Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video I have the Deepcool Assassin 3, and the reason why I purchased this product is because recently I've been a bit interested in how far I can overclock my CPU. So I got this cooler off of Amazon.ca for about 115 Canadian dollars. If you are considering purchasing this product, I would highly recommend you wait for a sale. I've seen the prices go all the way down to 80 Canadian dollars in places like Canada Computers. And without further ado, let's move on to the unboxing. The exterior of the box is quite nice since it displays relevant information about the cooler and looks very stylish. Also, the 280 watt TDP is displayed right at the front of the box to let you know it's capable of some serious cooling. Once we move on to the inside of the box, we find many more boxes of varying sizes, and at the very bottom you'll find a massive heatsink. Now to get into the many boxes that were included in the main box, we first find a screwdriver with a black tip, which gave me the thought that maybe it's magnetic at the tip, but sadly that is not the case. The next two boxes each contained a 140mm fan, which were quite high performance as they are able to provide an airflow rate of 90.37 CFM. And now for the final box that was included, it contained everything else you would need to install the cooler into your PC. This includes a user manual, various different bits to help you mount the cooler to your motherboard, some thermal paste with a thermal paste applicator, some extension cables, some fan clips, and some kind of a badge with a Deepcool logo. When it came to mounting the cooler onto my motherboard, it was surprisingly a very easy task, and can be attributed to the fact that I was working outside of my case. But I have also installed the cooler onto my motherboard while it was inside my case, and it was a bit harder, especially when clipping on the fan clips, but overall it's not too hard of a procedure, undoubtedly if you're working in a case that's of similar size to mine. Granted, this part of the video is not done the best due to my inexperience in overclocking and in making a few stupid decisions. But moving on, I would first like to show the benchmarking results and explain them to you since there were many differences throughout. At the time, I decided to compare the Deepcool Assassin 3 to the cooler that was already in use in my PC, which was the AMD Wraith Prism cooler, so I loaded up Cinebench R23 and started the multi-core test at stock speeds. Now, it should be stated that two different motherboards were in use for each test. For the AMD Wraith Prism cooler, I used the Asus TUF B450M Plus Gaming, and for the Deepcool Assassin 3, I used the MSI X370 SLI Plus. But since these two benchmarks were run while the CPU was at stock speeds, I doubt that there would have been any performance differences due to the difference in motherboards used. But aside from that, we can see a clear performance increase while running at stock speeds just by simply upgrading the CPU cooler, since the CPU likes to remain at 73 degrees Celsius max. Now to move on to some overclocking benchmarks. In my first attempt to overclock my CPU, I was able to get it running at 4.25 GHz. Any higher and my PC wouldn't start, which is a bit disappointing since on the CPU box it mentions that I should be able to reach 4.3 GHz, but nonetheless I decided to move on with the benchmarks for this overclock, and it got me a score of almost 500 points higher than when compared to stock speeds. This was a nice step up, but I wanted to push my CPU a bit further, and so I thought maybe if I upgraded the memory of my computer, it would increase the performance of my CPU, since I am using 2nd gen Ryzen, and my memory situation is a bit messy to say the least. So I replaced the random assortment of Corsair Vengeance memory that I had, which was running at 2400 MHz at 14 cache latency, to a set of G.Skill Ripjaw 5 memory kit, which were running at 2933 MHz at 14 cache latency, since it was recommended by AMD for 2nd gen Ryzen. Also, the new RAM sticks were quite a bit taller, for which I had to adjust the height of one of the fans for the Deepcool Assassin 3, which didn't allow me to close my case anymore. So needless to say, it was quite a messy situation, but it would have all been worth it if the performance had increased. So what was the performance like? Well, I received a score of 11,013 points, which at first did seem like a very promising result. However, I believe the performance increase was mainly due to the increase in wattage, which may have been in result of upgrading the memory, but I am really not sure. So I ran the benchmark once again for each memory configuration, and the results were quite contrasting. This time it seemed as if the memory upgrade was actually really a downgrade. And so I decided to just stop the benchmarks at this point, since there happened to be so many sources of error. Just for example, quad channel memory versus dual channel memory, 24 gigabytes versus 32 gigabytes of memory, and open side panel versus closed side panel. Now you may think to yourself a closed side panel would be better for airflow, but considering how dusty my case fans are, it's hard for me to come to a conclusion on that. In conclusion, the Deepcool Assassin 3 was able to keep up with dissipating heat off the CPU, and at no point was temperature an issue. So despite how messy the benchmarking was, it is clear that the Deepcool Assassin 3 was able to perform. So I would highly recommend this cooler, and I would just urge you to make sure that it fits in your case with all your other components. But that's going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, you can ask them down below in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer those questions, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.